This is American Real, where we aim to inspire, empower, and enlighten you through the stories of our guests. Here's your host, Roger Brooks.
Is suffering desirable?
Obviously, none of us want to suffer. You know, it certainly happened to Jesus Christ and everybody else who's ever lived. We've all had suffering. If you look back at your life and you look at the things that induced growth in you, most likely it was because of suffering. You become grateful for the suffering in your life. You become grateful for people who hurt you or even betrayed you. They pushed you to face deeply conditioned automatic beliefs and assumptions that aren't true, but you took to be true. I like to get my own way as much as anybody else, but when I don't get it, I have the opportunity to learn something. An example would be, I have the opportunity to not see the other person as being a bad person for not giving me what I want. We all have this entitlement myth that's like amazing. So suffering is, when you look at it objectively, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, it's an opportunity. And right now, living in America, we have enormous gifts that are just difficult to appreciate unless you travel to, say, third world countries. And my younger son, when he went to China and studied at Beijing University for a couple months, he came back, literally kissed the ground, literally kissed the tarmac at the airport when he landed in the United States.
Doing without a doer. Mm-hmm. That's chapter 7.
That's a key notion. This gets at the idea of self-identity or the sense of an I, and that's kind of complex and maybe outside the realm of this. But there's a book by a psychiatrist named Mark Epstein called Thoughts Without a Thinker that came out many years ago, and it's like, can thinking occur without me doing it? And I would say yes, it does. Can acting occur without me doing it? Well, yes, it does. When you are surrendered to the Holy Spirit, it's acting. And the feeling of it is that you know your body did something, but there was no sense that you decided to do it or were in charge of it. So it's like when I had this wake me up at 3 in the morning and insist I go downstairs, did I do that, or was I just moved by a force that I really wasn't in charge of? Well, I would say it's the latter. So doing without a doer is when you aren't in charge and you know that, and yet you're acting freely in the world, that's doing without a doer. And it can be talking, it could be taking action, it could be doing nothing much. But once you give up the idea that you're in charge, or that there's even a you in here to be in charge, once that's seen through, you don't just sit there and drool on yourself. Strangely, you get up and do things, but you're not, in a way, doing it. It's just happening. So that's a profound notion that is, and again, this is not unique to me or anybody else. We all do this many times a day. We're all acting without consciously thinking about it or intending it. And if you notice your own life, you'll see there's many examples of this. You can probably think of something in the last day or two, but driving a car without consciously thinking about it. It's just happening. And you may not, it's almost like the thinking mind, which would normally be doing the choosing, is offline much of that time. You're skilled, you practice, you know what you're doing. You don't need to be thinking about it. And yet what's needed will happen of its own. And this process is far more relevant and important in our life than we realize, because we're taught we should be in charge of everything all the time, and if we're not, we're making a mistake and failing at our responsibilities as mature adults. But that's really not the way it is. We're all the time, we're doing things without being in charge consciously. And they go well, they go fine.
And is it the same thing as your heart beating or
Yes.
digestion
Yeah, it
taking
is.
place?
I think it is. I mean, we don't make our heart beat, and we don't make our respiration rate be correct. We don't control the percentage of oxygen and carbon dioxide in our inhalations and exhalations, but something is in charge of all of this. And I really believe we don't do anything. We're not in charge of anything. But that's you don't have to believe that. But notice the times in your life when you just said or did something without thinking, and it was perfect. And I'm sure, I know this happens to everybody all the time, but we don't notice it. Why? Because we're not taught to and encouraged to, and also because, as I said, this thinking, observing, ruminating mind is sort of like not online at those times. So it happens in a space of kind of a timeless presence. The sense of time is not so clear when you're in this state of pure awareness and just acting freely in the world. But acting without an actor is delicious. I saw it. I took karate for 15 years here with Heidi Ochiai. I saw him doing it. I didn't know what it was at first. Eventually I came to realize he's not in charge. It's just happening. There's a skill that had to be developed. There's practice that had to happen. But eventually, as you go to class and you pass different kinds of katas or forms, you realize thinking your way through them isn't going to pass. It has to happen of its own. And then, he'll see that just like that, and saw it in many areas of life. But it's so freeing to realize you don't have to be in charge of everything. In fact, you're not in charge, and that's fine. That's good.
It is freeing. It's a
very
freeing feeling.
It's very liberating.
Is suffering desirable?
Is suffering desirable? I don't know why that's funny to me, but it's like, obviously none of us want to suffer. But if you look back at your life and you look at the things that induced growth in you, most likely it was because of suffering. At least that's how it seems to be for me when I look at my own life. You become grateful for the suffering in your life. You become grateful for people who hurt you or disappointed you or even betrayed you or offended you, because they pushed you to face deeply conditioned automatic beliefs and assumptions that aren't true but you took to be true. They force you to maybe be more flexible, maybe more creative, more resourceful. None of us like that, including me. I like to get my own way as much as anybody else. But when I don't get it, I have the opportunity to learn something. And an example would be, I have the opportunity to not see the other person as being a bad person for not giving me what I want. I mean, we all have this entitlement myth that's like amazing. But the other person is just being themselves, doing what's right for them. It's not really meant to hurt or disappoint me. If I choose to perceive it that way, that's my responsibility. I don't have to feel hurt or enraged or disappointed or rejected or anything else. It doesn't mean I don't feel that, but at least I can notice that's my responsibility. I'm adding that to this situation. So suffering is, when you look at it objectively, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, it's an opportunity. And I'm not saying I go seek it, but it happens to all of us. I mean, it's part of being a human being. It certainly happened to Jesus Christ and everybody else who's ever lived. We've all had suffering. And right now, living in America, we have enormous gifts that are just difficult to appreciate unless you travel to, say, third world countries. You come back and you realize we take so much for granted here. It's unbelievable. But both myself and my younger son, when he went to China and studied at Beijing University for a couple months, he came back and literally kissed the ground, literally kissed the tarmac at the airport when he landed in the United States. And I've had the same experience visiting third world countries. You come back and you realize, my God, we're so blessed here. It's unbelievable. And we take so much for granted, and our safety, our security, having enough food. I mean, we're blessed beyond comprehension. So it's good to be reminded of that. But suffering is always an opportunity to learn and to grow. It's hard. Nobody wants it.
And when we don't embrace the suffering, in some ways, is that more of a victim mentality where we're playing into
I
it?
mean, it's also it certainly can be a victim mentality. It leads to the creation of a lot of stories and narratives in our mind of, somebody treated us wrong because they're a bad person, or they were dropped on their head when they were kids. We make up all these elaborate stories for why it happened, and then we're often running. Then our thinking mind is in charge, and we're lost. We're lost in a story, and we're lost in the feelings that come from that story. Like any unfortunate, traumatic even event doesn't have to endure forever. And there are people who've had the worst things imaginable happen to them. There's a lot of research on post-traumatic stress disorder, and no matter what happens, the worst things you can imagine, some people are just very resilient and seem to process that and move on. And others never recover from things that objectively might not seem that bad. And of course, this is where I've spent 40 years of my life, being steeped, because most of psychotherapy is dealing with trauma and loss and that kind of grief and so forth. But we don't have to be devastated by anything that happens to us. Life happens, and it's not in our control. And how we perceive that is to a large extent up to us. And we can learn to perceive it in a way that's much more functional and creates much more of a sense of freedom, so that we don't perceive it as victimhood. But I think one of the most important things to sort of look at is a sense of entitlement, that we deserve for life to be different than it is. It's like, really? Life is just happening. It is what it is. If I think I deserve something different, then, that's going to probably create suffering for me sooner or later.
I was listening, you just reminded me, I was listening to a podcast recently, and the guest was talking about that our life, who we are in this avatar, whatever color skin we have, whatever culture we're from, whatever religion we were brought into, this is our experience here.
Yeah.
And nothing more. Like, don't look deep into that. Don't put labels on yourself or others.
Right.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Because it really made a lot of sense
Totally.
to me.
I would say don't judge it. Don't see it as deficient. I mean, it is what it is. And it's a gift. It's a profound gift. I mean, everyone who's alive is blessed, especially anyone in this country is blessed. But try to see, and I'm not saying horrible things don't happen all the time to people. They do. But I'm saying there is a way of living in the world and perceiving things that makes your life infinitely easier, and there's ways of perceiving things that makes it much harder. So when you have a sense of entitlement that you deserve something other than what's happening, that can maybe motivate you to take action in an effective way, but it can also be paralyzing and destructive. So people are just the way they are. They're not here for my benefit. They're just here to be themselves,
Where do you see our world going here in this next 12 months? I mean, there's just so much happening between politics, religion, and again, has it just all come back to just being that light, just not playing into the narrative that's...
Yes, I mean, as much as possible. I mean, look, we can always work on ourselves, no matter what's going on in the world. It doesn't have to be depressing. It doesn't have to be horrible. That doesn't mean there aren't times we get disappointed, but it's important not to take it personally, and it's important not to feel entitled. Those, to me, are big obstacles that we all have. And And it's also important not to believe that my opinions are right. My beliefs and opinions are just that. They're my beliefs and opinions. They're not God's truth. It's like, maybe take everything that we believe a bit less seriously and a bit, and have more of a willingness to realize every belief I have is conditional and relative. It's not absolutely true. So,
including religion.
Everything. All beliefs should be seen as conditional and relative, I think. And when you do that, you open up the possibility for learning something, or changing in some way, or being more open, or being more present, or being more real, being more authentic. Because, I mean, ultimately what this process leads to is being authentic. Being yourself, being real, being who you actually are, not who you think you're supposed to be, which is what an awful lot of us are doing much of the time. You quit trying to live up to other people's perceived expectations of you and just be yourself. And that's very freeing and very liberating. So I wish I knew what's coming in the next year. I think it's going to be a wild ride, honestly. But I have hope and I have faith that, I am a scientist. I was trained to be a research scientist, and I believe in science. I believe there's creative people all over the world working madly at trying to find, say, either a cure or a treatment, or, of course, vaccines for this current COVID situation that we have. And I think something like that will come up in the not too distant future. But in the meantime, we are destabilized. And I'd like to personally try not to add to the confusion, if I can help it, and try to be a force for peace and calm and reassurance, because we're not going to make great decisions if we're freaked out. And we don't need to be freaked out. Maybe we need to change our routines, but we don't need to be terrified, and we don't need to be frightened. So I wish I knew.
What do you say to the young generation? Because like you said earlier, we've never been through, none of us have ever been through anything like this. And it's really hard as parents, as teachers. What advice do you have for the young generation?
I don't mean to in any way present myself as like an oracle here, but it's like I have said and I would say, this too shall pass. I mean, we'll learn a lot from it. It'll change us. It'll be a different world, a different culture. But it can be better. It doesn't have to be worse. It'll be different. Most of us see difference, especially if we didn't choose it, as bad. It's not bad. It's just different. So embracing change is key. And I don't know how things are going to be different. I don't know how but I know it's going to be different. It already is. I don't see what we experienced 6 months ago is probably not coming back, not in the way it was. A lot of it will, but I would look at it as an opportunity for growth and change. And I think any massive change like this is, I can't say that's the purpose of it, but it is an opportunity for all of us to become more flexible, less entitled, and grow spiritually and emotionally. And this saying is attributed to Gandhi. I don't remember if it's actually Gandhi or not, but be the change you seek in the world. Yeah. That's what we can do. And certainly we can all turn inward and learn about our own reactivity and our own programming, and learn to be still and quiet and open to the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and then that will do wonders. So basically I would try to maybe be less wordy, but that's what I would try to say to anybody.
Great. Michael, religion is something we've touched on a little bit here and there. I'd love to get into a little bit of a deeper discussion if we can. You've talked about the Holy Spirit several times now, which is great. That's your belief, and I know what you mean. I mean, it's the greater source, right? For lack of a better term.
Yes, the ground of being.
Right. But one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is, I have friends that are Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
I've met some folks in India who are Hindu,
Mm-hmm.
Buddhists,
Mm-hmm.
of course Christian,
Mm-hmm.
how I grew up,
Mm-hmm.
and Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
None of these religions are right or wrong. They're
Right.
just that, right? They're a man-made
Mm-hmm.
religion.
Right.
But why is there so much divide even over religion? And it has been for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
How do we
Yeah.
look at, I kind of see it as the reality of there's a religion here in this plane,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a greater good that
Right.
overarches everything.
Well, remembering that is the key, that underneath all of these religious traditions is the same truth as far as I'm concerned. I don't mean to trample on the differences between, say, Islam and Christianity and Judaism and Buddhism and Hinduism. These all have their own cultural roots and linguistic roots and historical roots, and they're all wonderful contributions to our traditions. But if you look at the inspiration of the original teacher of the Buddha or Muhammad or Jesus, I think they were all tapping into the same source. And they all articulated it in their own way, given the culture, given the language. But I think you can tap into that same source right now. I think we all can. It's part of our human nature. So, religions are usually a series of beliefs and convictions that you're asked to believe, and mostly about things you can't personally know to be true. And that has value. I'm not here to tell people what to think or believe, but I think we can discover for ourselves by our own inner work the same truths that Jesus revealed and that Shakyamuni Buddha revealed, and we're not actually, I don't think, totally dependent on anybody else telling us or showing us this. Ultimately, we have to figure it out for ourselves, and we have the opportunity to do that. And being encouraged to actually believe that that's possible for you, I think that's valuable. So whether you can get that encouragement from contemporary teachers or from traditional teachers, like the founders of these great religions, it's important to believe that you have the ability right now in you to know the same truth and experience it directly for yourself. And you can leave out all the extras maybe, unless you just like to have a cultural practice, say, of a religion. But I enjoy any religious tradition when I'm exposed to it. I love them. I'm very comfortable. I go to a Bible study every week with a local nun, and I'm been very deeply immersed in Zen Buddhism for forever, and now for 4 or 5 months I've been teaching almost completely out of Advaita Vedanta, which is a school of Hinduism that it's all, to me, saying the same thing.
You know what I liken it to? To me, it's like, and I'm like you, I love all the different religions. I think it's wonderful. But to me, it's no different than experiencing culture itself. So going over to someone's home for an Italian meal, or going, taking a trip to China and experiencing that culture.
Right.
Just, it's very similar that this is the culture or this is the religion. Respect it. Learn from
Enjoy
it. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Why does there have to be the fighting and the bickering and the mine is right, yours is right?
Well, it's not just religion, though. Human beings do that about everything.
Yeah.
Republicans and
Talk about
Democrats,
politics,
Yankees and Mets.
Right.
I mean, college football.
Right.
I mean, where I grew up in the South, the first thing people want to know about you is who's your team.
Right.
And if it's not Alabama, then that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I was like,
same thing in Europe. Who's your soccer team?
who's your soccer team? Right.
So
Labels. This is
labels.
what we do. We divide. We separate. And underneath, there's a unity and a oneness that needs to also be remembered and recognized. That, it's just what human beings do. They divide and they separate. They name and then they create separation where it doesn't need to be there. But that's what we do, and we all do it because we're brought up to do it. And noticing how you do it, noticing how I do it is worthwhile. So I have to work at this myself also. I mean, there aren't a lot of things that will trap me in this way or trigger me, but there's a few, and actually, say college sports is probably one, and political issues is another one. That's about it. I don't see much getting to me at this point, but a few things will. So then that's okay. That's something for me to still let go of, my convictions and beliefs that I'm right and somebody else is wrong. I mean, we're just here doing the best we can. And, one of the many realizations that came from this spontaneous awareness is that everyone is doing the best they can. And you and I are doing the best we can. And that even when we did things that seem wrong or stupid, we were doing the best we could then. Given what we knew, given our skills and our knowledge and development, our programming and the situation at the time, we did the best we could. So this helps you not be so critical of other people or yourself. You have to be able to forgive and have compassion for everyone, and especially you, because most of us will be much harder on ourselves than we are on anybody else. And forgiveness and compassion are, it's always a good thing.
What about gratitude?
Well, gratitude, yes, thank you. That's right there also. I mean, if you see things accurately, you're endlessly grateful for everything, because even trauma, even even disappointment or rejection, because you know, and I couldn't have said this 25 years ago, but now it seems very obvious to me. Give thanks for everything. And I remember reading, maybe 6 weeks ago, I gave a talk and talked about this practice of thanking God for everything all the time, no matter what it is. Thank you, God. I needed that. I appreciate it. No matter what it is. Even if it's something that you didn't want, don't like, wish hadn't happened, it's still a gift from God. And if you can literally give thanks, and I usually suggest doing it out loud, give thanks for everything that's happened to you, every single thing. That is very profound and very liberating. And if it happened, it in some way was meant to happen, as far as I can tell, because I know I'm not in charge of this, and give thanks for it. It's an incredibly powerful practice.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have never heard it put that way, but now it takes gratitude to another level for me. So thank you, and for our listeners.
Yeah, it's not just being grateful for what you wanted that you got.
Right.
It's being grateful for what you didn't want. That's even more powerful. It's all good. Let it be. Be grateful. Look for what you can learn, how you can let go of fixed beliefs and assumptions that probably really aren't true anyway. They just limit your freedom and your ability to see reality and to see other people accurately. So thank you, God. I appreciate everything. I'm so grateful. Yes, gratitude is probably, in a way, you could say number one. I can't think of anything more important. But with gratitude goes forgiveness and compassion and generosity,
It's all tied in.
Mm-hmm.
It's all tied in.
They all go together.
Any meaning to your retirement on Halloween?
That's funny. I felt like I can't say that it was. It just was a time of the year that I was wanting to stop. I don't know. Beyond that, I can't say. I felt like maybe I should wear a costume that day, but I didn't.
Well, it stuck out to me because it was in your bio, and my birthday's actually on Halloween, so it had some meaning.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay. Wow, this is just a great conversation. I cannot wait to dive into this book and for others to do the same. What's your mission now that you're in retirement?
It feels like very much the way it's been for almost 20 years, to do the will of God in the world. And when I said I'm an instrument of your will, use me, I meant that. And I think that's happened. I think I've been guided and I've been of use to the Holy Spirit, and I want to continue to be as long as I'm here. Otherwise, I don't see any particular reason for me to be here. It's like, but I'm still here. So there's a purpose, and that purpose is not my purpose, it's God's purpose. And I'm grateful to be alive and to be participating and to be contributing in whatever way I can. And I know that probably doesn't answer your question directly, but the answer is moment to moment. I believe what I'm meant to be doing will be revealed to me, and I trust that totally. And that's great. I'm happy. That's wonderful.
And I have a feeling that you believe wholeheartedly that death is not death.
Yeah, death is, first off, I have to say I don't really know what happens when we die, but I also feel there's nothing to be afraid of. I see death as, especially when you're old and your body's worn out, I think it can be seen, it's an accomplishment to die. I know that probably sounds odd, but it's not easy to die. Because I worked for 15 years as a consultant to our local oncology program, and worked in hospice, and very meaningfully for me, I was present with my mother, right before she died, and I could see, she was ready to go. This is about 5 years ago. Her body was worn out. She had a stroke. She was in a rehab facility, and she wasn't going to recover, and she was 92 years old. It was the right thing. There's a time and a place where death is next, and it can be seen as a welcome relief. Your work here is done. You've accomplished what you needed to accomplish. Now it's time to let go and be free of this worn out body. Obviously, it's harder to see that maybe when a younger person dies or a child, but most of us are going to die of old age one way or another, and when that happens, it's the right thing. It's what's next, and it's good. There's nothing to either fear or oppose. I think when it's your time, welcome it. It's what's next.
Do you feel that we are all part of life? We are all one.
Mm-hmm. To me, we are. And by life, I don't only mean human life. I mean, in Buddhism, there's an idea of sentient beings. All sentient beings deserve the same thing we do. They deserve the opportunity to live their life and to be protected as much as possible and to not be harmed. Not that that's easy to do. If I have a wasp in my house, I try to kill it. But, it's just, or get it out one way or another. If I have to, I'll kill it. But I try to get it out the window. But so we do what we can to realize not only our oneness with all humans, but all sentient beings, and even rocks and everything. I mean, when you stop seeing yourself as the center of the universe, then life is we're part of life, and it's endless. Yeah, it's all good.
Well, I'm deeply grateful to have this discussion, because it's not, a lot of people think about these type of things, but we don't normally talk about it. Maybe you do, but I don't talk about it day to day. So I think it's important to have the discussion and to bring the awareness and give people something to really think about. I know it's something I think about a lot.
Oh, wonderful. I'm glad. I mean, it's why I'm here. It's all I know to do, and it's what I can do, what I have to offer. So I'm glad it's received and welcomed, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with you, and I hope it can continue in some way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So before I let you go, just a couple of last questions that I like to ask every guest and get their response. If you were to take out your cell phone right now and call the 20-year-old Michael, what would you tell him?
Don't worry so much. Don't be so worried about what you do or don't do, and have more fun. Enjoy your life and be kind to other people. Yeah, I would say at 20 I was fairly lonely, and I worked very hard, but I wasn't happy, and I didn't realize how loved and safe and secure I was. And I try to remember that.
Awesome. How could we help more people on a daily basis? I just made me think of something. So, I heard a quote, and I'd like to talk about this once in a while. It's help one person a day, or help as many people as you can a day.
The way we can all be most helpful is to lose interest in our own mind, our own beliefs, our own assumptions, and be open and present to what's in front of us. And then when you do that, endless opportunities show up to be of assistance to other people. And this happens to me all day, every day. I'll be standing in the checkout line in a grocery store, and if you really are there, if you're really present, you might notice the checkout person is hassled and having a hard day, and so maybe you say something to them that gives them a sense of being seen, because most people might just relate to them as if they're a machine or something. So this happens all the time, and when you're really actually open and present, people somehow notice that, at least unconsciously, and will reach out to you in one way or another. And then when there's no agenda and there's no resistance, then you just respond freely and spontaneously, and it's like freedom for everybody, and joy and enjoyment. So you be a force for good in the world by not even trying to be, but just being open and present. Then life uses you in the way it needs you.
Wow. If people want to reach you, what's the best way to reach out to you, and how do we get your book?
Well, the book's on Amazon, Michael Hall, PhD, Awaken Alive. It's easiest to get it that way. And I made the price of the ebook 99 cents. So I learned early on, Amazon let me market it. And so I gave it away, but then they only let you do one free giveaway every 6 months or something. So then I just reduced the price. I think originally it was $9.95. I reduced it to 99 cents, which was the lowest Amazon would let me. But I want it to be available to anybody in the world who can, who has an interest in this. So, and the paperback's of course on Amazon, but they can reach me at perceptionisall@gmail.com. That's my email, or it's very easy to reach me on Facebook. I have both a professional page, Michael Hall, PhD, where I stream live daily meditations and weekly talks, and my personal Facebook page. Those are the easiest ways to get hold of me.
Great, and we'll put the links in the show notes so
yeah,
people could.
And my website, drmichaelhall.com, that's mainly linking to these other pages, but those are the easiest ways.
Fantastic. And one last question before I let you go, and that is, at the end of the day, what kind of mark do you want to leave on this earth? What do you want your legacy to be?
He did the best he could. He was a child of God, and he did the best he could. That's
awesome.
It. Yeah.
Awesome.
I don't have any grandiose needs. I want to be a good person and have people remember me that way.
Dr. Michael Hall, welcome to the American Real family. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for the in-depth conversation, and I cannot wait to continue to follow you in your career.
Well, thank you, Roger. I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed it. This is really all I really want to talk about. So I'm glad you were interested. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning into American Real. Be sure to visit our website, americanreal.tv, or search for us on iTunes or YouTube for past episodes. While you're there, please rate us or leave us a review, as that helps others find our show. I am truly grateful and appreciate all of your support. If you'd like to be part of our inner circle or want one-on-one coaching, check out the American Real Learning Academy, where we have self-help groups and courses so you can build the best you. We also have a new Facebook group where you can connect with high achievers from around the world. If you want to go even further, maybe you're determined to write your own book or launch your own podcast, contact me today to see if we could help. You can can reach me through Instagram or Facebook, or email me directly at roger@americanreal.tv. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.